Good afternoon, I'm TerryTopCat for clusterview.com for TerryTopCat Purrsents. We're in St Leonard's and I'm with the iconic Bruce Fleming photographer. Good afternoon, Bruce, and thank you to you and Kim for your hospitality, welcoming myself, Mark Anthony, for Clusterview to your home and your beautiful studio here. I'm going to talk about your career, your interest in photography, your experiences with Jimi Hendrix, and so much more.
Fine, very great pleasure, and welcome to our house.
Thank you very much. So we'll start with you telling us before we started recording that your dad was a trombonist in the 1940s, is that correct?
The 30s.
30s, okay.
Way back.
And did that really ignite one of the reasons ignited your interest in music?
Oh yes, absolutely. I hear him playing in the front room. I wasn't allowed in there, but he'd be playing in there, getting the tone right. And then when he went off in black tie, he'd go off to work with various bands, and they were on the radio. And we had no TV at that time. We had this giant radiogram, and I'd sit by it and listen to him play.
Did you ever see him perform live?
Yes, I did. I was sat in the pits with him, which is
oh,
a pit,
really? Oh, wow!
Yeah, in a theatre, and he was playing in a band there, and I sat next to him. Yeah, when he was playing, fascinating.
At that time, it must have been especially. But you also had an interest in art as well. So you started painting very young, didn't you?
Always, yeah. I just gravitated into painting, and I was a watercolourist. But the problem was then that the weather in the 40s was terrible. We had these things called peace supers. The weather was appalling, so it was very difficult to get pictures.
This is in North London?
Yeah, so if I went out with an easel and started painting, it was very difficult because it would rain a lot, and there was a lot of chimneys using coal, so we had these fogs, terrible fogs. So
pre-war.
That's right. So what my mother did was she gave me a camera. It was a box camera, and I took pictures of things I liked, and then got them developed and stuck them on the wall, so I could sit at home and paint in the warm without freezing. But the funny thing happened when I was working with the camera. I just thought, this is amazing, and gradually I got so interested in the camera, it was much more interesting than painting, and I was catching images, and I just got totally involved in it.
And what would you take pictures of? Mostly of
anything,
nature, or
my cousins, anything, people on bicycles. I tried everything, moving cameras, but all with a box camera.
And it's mostly in black and white?
Black and white, yeah. Developed my own film, and we had a cupboard.
You learned that yourself?
Yeah,
do that?
Cupboard under the stairs. I read books on it so that I could learn how to print. We had a little tiny enlarger, and it was all very miniature, but I absolutely loved it.
And obviously it's different now with all the information of how to process film. That's right. So different at that time as well.
That's right.
So that really ignited your interest and passion for photography.
That's right. But there wasn't much chance for me to do very much because I wasn't old enough to get a job or whatever. The first chance I had was extraordinary. I was what they call a correspondence boy for the Daily Graphic in Holborn. We had a satchel and a bike, and we would carry plates, documents to different newspapers or wherever. And I was sitting there with 14 or 15 other kids. They were playing cards, and I was bored out of my brains. And the door opened, a guy came in, had one of those plastic things on, and he's had these steel things, and he said, "Boy, help photographer upstairs, anybody? And I sat there, and they went, no. So I sat there, I thought, what the hell am I doing here? So I said, I'll go. He said, come with me, in the lift, straight up. And I walked into this room, this huge room, and the smell of hypo, it was like acetic acid. And it's very warm, and there were people running in and out from behind blankets, sort of doorways with curtains. And he said, follow me. And I went down this long corridor, and there's a guy who looked like Humphrey Bogart, the slouch hat, a fedora, and he's kicking a door. He's like, come on. And he's got a pile of plates in his hand, and he said, who are you? I said, Fleming from downstairs. He said, you're my boy for the day? I said, come here. He said, hold those. We went into, now the person came out of the darkroom, went in the darkroom, and he said, right, Here's this box. I want you to take these films out of there. I said, films? What films? So he said, no, you pull the slide out in the dark. Don't switch the light on. Put all those in there and then tell me when they're done.
And that's the first time you had actually been in a dark room?
I had no idea what I was doing. But I knew it was film, so
Sure.
I got the hang of it, packed it all. I did okay. He said, come with me. So then we saw the boys develop the film. And
that must have been so interesting for you.
and then I went in the darkroom, and this enormous darkroom, twice as big as this, 3 times as big. And they had horizontal enlargers. And there were boys sticking paper on walls and rushing here and then throwing in dishes and rocking the dishes. And it's just chaos, but organised chaos. And then the printers would start doing strange things with their hands. What they were doing was they were stopping light arriving at a certain point to make a better print. Absolutely amazing. And from then on, I just fell in love with the whole thing. Down in the basement was an old boy who did in-house photography called Billy Field. And I kept going down there and saying, can I? He said, no, piss off. And eventually he said, all right, you're really keen? Come on in. And he started.
How old were you at the time, would you say?
15. And he kicked my ass a lot. And eventually I got a slightly better camera. And I'd show him my work, and he'd say, no, you've got it wrong, da-da-da-da-da. An old Cockney boy he was. But he was lovely. And then one day, the Queen, the coronation, and one of the photographers, I think his name was Stanley Devon, said, your experience, come with me, you're going to carry this lot, 2 huge bags, boxes, and a tripod, a wooden tripod. And we arrived at the Admiralty Arch, and next to the Admiralty is a thing called the Citadel. It's a massive red building with ivy all over it. We were on top of there, looking down the Mall, and we set the cameras up.
Many other photographers there?
Oh yeah.
There must have been for the coronation,
tons, yeah. I think for the graphic there were 5 photographers on different parts of the route.
Right.
And we were looking down the Mall. And that's my first experience. Then when he'd shot all the pictures, he gave me the plates and a couple of pounds and said, get a taxi and go to the graphic now. So I had to rush to the graphic. Never been in a taxi before. You know, amazing. The first boy there got 2 weeks' wages. I was 3rd, so I got something. I can't remember what it was. And that was my first big experience of being in photography.
And what a great job, and the Queen's coronation as well. So, obviously we started with your journey of your interest and your first experiences with photography.
Yeah.
So when you were obviously on your journey, tell us about the photographers who were like, that you really appreciated your work. So you started off in black and white, and black and white was obviously something that you were really drawn to and really loved.
Absolutely. Yeah. Photographers. Richard Avedon, you probably don't know him, but a very famous American photographer. I'll show you a couple of books and you'll see. Another man called Eugene W. Smith, who worked with the Army and the Navy and the Air Force during the war.
And you were also in one of the one of the Navy or the
Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah, I did national service in Northern Ireland and Cyprus.
And how old were you when you did that?
I was 18.
Wow, so you did the photography first and then you did your national service.
That's right.
But still had that interest for photography.
Yeah, I
plans
tried
to carry on to do
I
it?
wanted to do photography in
Right.
the Air Force, but I didn't get that. I got signals. So I was in the signals, Air Force signals.
But obviously
for 2
seeing
years.
that photographer's work with all the forces, that must have really, so right, I love all this, I want to do this more.
Yeah, absolutely, loved it. But there wasn't an opportunity for me again. So I went in the Air Force, and that's it. You're in. Once you're in the services,
yeah, that's true.
That's it for 2 years.
Sure.
So 2 years and 3 months, and I left.
Did you enjoy it?
It
Or
was
it
okay.
not really you?
A lot of it was very boring, and
very
some of it was a bit
creative.
frightening because we were not fighting the IRA, but there was problems.
Sure.
And we were out on patrol. We weren't sure if we were going to get shot or not. It's a bit like that.
Sure.
It was a bit hilarious. I was a signaller, so I had the radio set, and the rations. And I had a chap with a machine gun who looked after me, because I was the communication for the group.
Absolutely.
Some very boring times, a couple of scary times, but generally interesting. And you learn
Made
about...
some good friends.
Yeah,
And discipline as well, I suppose.
Yeah, lost a couple. They're blown up in
sorry.
Cyprus. Yeah, everywhere we went, there seemed to be someone who wanted to kill us. You know, the Irish in Northern Ireland and in Cyprus, a man called Colonel Grivas, Ioka, Freedom for Cyprus. They wanted the British out. So everywhere we went, we weren't much liked, weren't appreciated. But I got out of there, and I was a bit lost. When you come out of the services, you're lost. You don't quite know what you've been on such heavy manners for so long. It's hard to get your life back again.
Yeah,
you know, it's difficult.
I can comprehend. Yeah.
So I went to Jersey with a few friends. We had a tea chest band. I played bass tea chest.
Yeah.
We performed along the front there. We had no money. We lived in a car and a tent. I mean, it was crazy, you know. It's wonderful. And then I got a job in a hotel as a chef, a commis chef. And from there, I met another chap who said he's going to open a fish and chip shop. And I've got some photographs to show you here.
Yeah, please do.
So I worked we had a fish and chip shop in St Helier in Jersey.
And how was Jersey different to London? Must have been completely different.
Completely different. Completely. Part French. It's they speak French and English.
And we're talking what, late 50s?
This is I came out in 57, so 57, 58 I was there
Right.
for about a year, and then I came back to London and tried to get jobs, but I couldn't settle.
But still had that
settle.
passion for photography.
Absolutely, it was always there, but
Right.
you know. In Jersey, funnily enough, one of my jobs, I met a photographer on the beach. He was a beach photographer, just taking pictures of people, and then we'd process the film at night, and I helped him, and then he'd put the pictures in the window, and people would come and buy them. Yeah, it was, but it was something to do with.
But you still had your camera.
No, I didn't have a camera.
You didn't have a
No,
camera then?
no,
Okay.
No. And then I met a man called Pierre de Villiers. That's him up there. He had racing cars, and I got totally involved in racing cars because I went to his house, which was a huge house in North London, near where my mother lived. And I heard he was renting rooms, and I wanted a room put a darkroom in. And he said, I've got a room, it's right next to the garage, it's got a sink. It was this long, thin room. So I said, what's the rent? He said, nothing. He said, teach me a bit of photography.
Wow, what a great trade-off.
So I was working away in there, and I could hear the cars revving up, racing cars, in his garage. He's a crazy guy. So he had 9 cars, and there was a small square outside, and he had them all around the square. You could park anywhere then.
So what was his... Well, he was...
Well, he called me in and said, could you give me a hand? So I ended up as a mechanic.
Wow, you've done a lot of things.
I know, so, and not a very good mechanic, but I was a
Okay.
mechanic. And then I went to races with him.
That must have been an interesting while to
Silverstone,
see all...
yeah, because he raced cars as well.
Oh, did he? Okay.
So one day I'm at a race and I meet a guy called Jerry Mason, and he's a photographer. And he said, Pierre tells me you're into photography. I said, yeah. He said, can you print? I said, sure. He said, there's my card. Come and see us. There's 4 photographers and we need a printer. So I said, okay. I thought, Jesus, can I manage this? So I went to a place called Fact Photography in South Kensington.
Early 60s now.
Now it's 1960. I did a test in the darkroom, and the manager said, that's pretty good. He said, but you don't have a lot of experience. I said, no, but give me a chance. Give me 3 weeks, and I'll show you what I can do. He said, okay, you got a deal. So I went to work, and they liked my stuff.
Still living at Pierre's?
No, I'm living with my mother now.
Okay. But you
I had a tiny dark room there as well.
Okay.
But the problem was I wasn't getting along with my stepfather, so that's why I tried to go the darkroom outside, because I was freer then, you know.
Sure.
So Jerry was a lovely guy. He was big on cars. He was a car photographer. Then there was Roy Round, who was a ballet photographer, just did ballet. Ivor Ashmore, who did knitwear. I mean,
So what a variety of photographers.
yeah.
Interesting
So I had to
subject,
print
isn't it?
for all these guys, you know.
Wow.
And Bob Belton, who did portraits and whatever. You know.
Well, did you have a preference out of them?
Not
at that
really.
time,
They,
no?
they were damn good photographers and
Right.
quite different. And there's
Yeah.
4 of them. So,
But that
and
makes
I-
you more interesting.
Yeah, it kept me
Interesting.
very busy, and I had
Yeah.
to work with the style that they wanted.
Right.
And each style was quite different. So I learned a hell of a lot about printing.
Sure.
But one day, Jerry had a friend called Ed Alexander, and he was a cheesecake photographer shooting naked girls for Playboy. And he was kind of an English guy, but he Americanized. He had a sports car, and he was very cool. And he came in and said, "Could you print that for me one day?" And I said, "Sorry, I should, sure." I printed it. He said, "That's pretty good." He said, "You're into photography?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." He said, "Have you got any work?" I said, "Sure." So he said, "Show me your work." So I showed him. He said, "This isn't bad." He said, "Why don't you become freelance?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "You go out and you get work. You show your work to people and they give you jobs." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you can do that. You'll need a portfolio." I said, "What's a portfolio?" So he said, he got me actually bought me a portfolio.
You were very lucky. You had some really cool people helping you and
Lovely man.
advising you.
I haven't got the photograph is being framed at the moment of him, and I started with £60 in the post office. Didn't have a bank account, a Rolleiflex and a Metz flash gun, and that's how I started life. And I went out, and it was a struggle. It was hard.
At
I
that
was in
time, a
my-
lot of people, there must have been lots of freelance photographers like now, and you know, back then.
There were a few, but we were rated just below a dog act in a circus. I mean, you know, we weren't. The photography, can't make any money out of that. It wasn't. It just
How
wasn't
did your mum?
there.
How did your mum react when you started going freelance?
She was for me 100%.
Oh, that's brilliant. I
I
love
had the
that.
most marvellous mother.
Wonderful.
She stuck with me.
That's great.
And it was a struggle,
Sure.
but I persevered. And gradually I got known. And then I heard about Ronnie Scott's. It's a new
So
jazz
it was a new
club.
jazz car, and you love jazz
Yeah.
as well as, you know,
Absolutely.
obviously listening to your
I
dad's
was always
music.
listening
And,
to, yeah.
Yeah.
So I went down to Ronnie's and they said yeah, we're starting a club here, and who are you? I said, photographer. And he said, are you with anybody? I said, not at the moment. He said, well, if you're with a magazine, we can work together, you know. So he said, Melody Maker would be good, if you can get something in the Melody Maker for us. So I went to the Melody Maker.
Explain to everybody at the time, so we're talking, what year now? 60s,
Now
obviously.
60, 61 still,
Right.
you know. So I went to the Melody Maker.
And that was one of the biggest publications
Yeah,
at that time.
and now I had a couple of decent cameras. I'll show you them up there. They're just behind you. A couple
still
of
got
35.
them?
Yeah, they're over there.
Wonderful.
They were 35mm Canons, and a little bag and whatever. I tell you how hard it was. I had holes in my shoes, and I had to either buy a new pair of shoes or a wide-angle lens. Guess what I bought?
Wide angle
So
lens.
eventually my mother bought me a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And I was pretty poor. So I went to see them, and I went in to see somebody, and they said, lovely stuff, but we got people here already who work for us. And so I said, I
And
want to work
quite
for you.
competitive, would you say, that world in
Very,
terms of magazines?
very.
and
Trying
music
to
magazines?
get in,
Yeah.
it was difficult. And they had their own guys, two
Of
guys
course.
I think they had. So I'm not going to give up. And they said, okay. So what I did is I sat on their doorstep in Covent Garden. Every morning I'd be there at 7:30.
Wow. That's
And they had to
dedication.
step over me. And I'd sit there with the
I
cameras.
love that.
And they kept standing and saying, hey, you're still here? I said, yep, I'm still here. So it was miserable, and and it took about 5 days. And then the guy opened the door and said, editor wants to see you. And he was the Scots guy, and he said, you know what? I love your persistence. You're a bit of a handful, aren't you? I said, I'm not going to quit. He said, okay, all right, you want to work for us? I said, yes. He said, all right. He said, right, Eartha Kitt is at the talk of the town.
And that was on Tottenham Court Road, because I remember
That's
that.
right.
Yeah,
He said,
that's a great
the
venue
press
back in the
call
day.
is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Be there and get me a picture, and I want a good picture.
And have you heard of Eartha Kitt at the time?
I've heard of her, but I heard
okay,
that she used to
well,
sing
familiar.
like that, deep voice, you know. So I arrived, and there is Eartha Kitt, and wow.
Was there many photographers there as well?
Everybody. There was a line of them, and
Right.
I froze.
Was that the first time you've been in that situation?
Absolutely.
Where there's
I'd never
competition
seen
or
them.
other photographers?
Yeah, some of them were very tall, and but they were all, you know, confident.
Right.
And I was at the back with me Rolleiflex, and I froze. And they all took pictures over here, and she's going like this, and eventually they said that's it, and they left. And she looked at me and she said, "What's the matter, honey? Don't you want to take my picture?" I
Oh.
said, "Miss Kitt, I don't want to get what they've got. I want to get something." And the guy said, "No, it's all over now." She said, "No, it's not. Give the kid a chance. Let's how
How old
lovely
were
she
you at
was."
that time?
I was now 22, 23, something like that, I think.
How wonderful of her to say that.
Yeah, there you are. That's a lovely lady.
Yeah,
So she said, "What do you want me
absolutely.
to do?" And she had this fabulous fur coat. I said, "Sit on the stairs and look gorgeous, because you are." She said, "Oh, really?" You know,
I
so
bet she was.
yeah. So she sat on the stairs and did all sorts of threw it and laid that back, and I got the best pictures. Front page of the Melody Maker.
Wow.
From then on, I worked for
congratulations.
them. You know.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but it was because she was so lovely.
And through the Melody Maker and what other publications? So that was the start of you having your
Yeah,
actual work in music publication.
Yeah, I got work published in NME, Downbeat, you know, all sorts of bits and pieces. I would shoot extra. I went to the Marquee a lot. They had some good
That was
bands
on
there.
Charing Cross Road then, was that the
that's
original
right.
Marquee?
Yeah. They had the striped ceiling. They got some great jazz in there, so I'd shoot pictures and try and get them in the papers.
And lots, obviously, you went back to Ronnie Scott's because you had your stuff in the Melody Maker, and then you got to see all these legends like Stan Getz, and tell us all the other amazing jazz musicians
Well,
that you got to see and photograph.
Zoot Sims was one of my dearest mates. I loved him to bits.
So
And-
tell
and-
everyone who Zoot Sims was, if they're not familiar who he was, what musician.
He was a white guy from the Midwest, tenor player, a fantastic player. But then I knew Stan Getz very well. I photographed him. Harold McNair, yeah, he was. He died very young, sadly, about 37. He was a alto player, mixed race, Jamaican. Beautiful guy, beautiful player, wonderful player.
So, you know, obviously that's the genre of music that you really loved.
Yeah.
And you got to photograph it, obviously see them perform as well,
Yeah.
hang out with them as well. What were they like as people?
Oh, great. They were artists, and they knew that I was serious,
Right.
and to sit and talk to them about their art,
experiences, yeah,
their
exactly,
experiences,
yeah.
and have a smoke with them, you know, everybody
Yeah.
was puffing away. So when Ronnie shut, you know, we'd stay on and sit around and talk and take pictures, and wonderful.
We're talking about Ronnie Scott's in the early 60s.
Yes.
And tell us about a lot of the American musicians. You said there was an embargo about them actually performing in the UK.
Yes, there was, because the Musicians Union objected to them coming over. So Ronnie went over and did a deal with the Musicians Union in America to bring in certain people, and they
Artists.
would send English artists out there.
That's a good exchange.
So a swap.
Yeah.
And that's how we got Zoot, Dexter Gordon, Stan Getz. You know, had never been seen before. We had never heard of people like this. We had our own homegrown jazz,
Sure.
English jazz, but it didn't have the power of American jazz, which is where it was
Originated
literally-
from, yeah.
Exactly.
So tell us about how you got to be heard, or you got to meet PR, Les Perrin and David Block.
Well, there was a big do up in Blackpool. Melody Maker had a big do. I can't remember what it was. It was something like getting bands together. It was a kind of an event.
Was Melody Maker on par with NME?
Yeah, oh yeah.
The-
sure.
the
I
two
think they were
major-
probably
Music publications
yeah.
at the time.
So I think I showed you I think that was it. That was the the press coverage. So they sent me up there to meet the bands and take some pictures.
Which bands were performing?
Oh, all kinds. Rock bands, jazz bands, a lot. It was a very big do. I can't remember all the names. And we stayed in a hotel, which was paid for and whatever. And I met a guy called David Block, young guy, a public relations man.
First time you met public relations?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we got along like house on fire. And he said, why don't you bring your work down and meet my boss, Les Perrin, who was the best publicist going in Europe then.
For all bands?
Oh.
All kind of genre of
For
music?
anything, for
Wonderful.
anything. Especially the entertainment industry.
Right. So films as well?
Yeah,
As
a
well.
lot,
Okay.
everything. So I met
What
him
an
in, he had
introduction.
a place in Soho, in Tin Pan Alley. He had a little office.
Tin Pan Alley in the 60s must have been
Yeah, it was
such
amazing.
a brilliant
Amazing.
place and a buzz.
So it's a very short street, but there was so
Sure.
much going on there. Anthony Newley was underneath us, writing Oliver, you know,
Wow.
with Leslie Brickus,
Yeah.
you know, and it was, the whole place was alive, really, for music.
Absolutely, yeah.
The big band, there were big guitar shops and the whole
Not
thing.
so much now, unfortunately, but you know.
Yeah, but it was great then. So I went to see Les, and he was a little guy, tubby little guy, but he was very, very together in the head. And he saw my work, and he said, very nice. He said, will you work for us? And I said, I'd love to. And then he said, okay, well, there's this chap called Dave Clark. He's starting a band. I want you to go and photograph him. So I met Dave, and he said, where do you want to shoot it? I said, well, I can borrow Ronnie Scott's club because it's got lighting there.
And you become mates with Ronnie
Exactly.
since his time.
So he said, okay, so he brought the band down. I showed you the first picture I took of him with the band,
Yeah.
the lighting, and he's sitting at the drums and all. So I did the picture, and he
And
said,
had you heard their music by?
no.
So you did, this is without hearing any of their music?
Yeah, so I
And
shot the
meeting them for the
pictures.
first time?
Yeah.
And you know,
Again, I
gauging
got
their
along fine with them.
personalities.
I got along great with them, and Dave loved the pictures. And he said, I love your stuff. He said, I want you to be my photographer, and we're going to go places. I said, love to. So that's how I started with him. And I worked with them for 7 years, travelled with them
All over the world?
all over, yeah, America, all over, shooting pictures.
And your lovely wife, Kim, was saying at that time they were as big as the Beatles. I mean, the
They were.
Beatles were the band that
That's right.
everyone
They
went
were-
to
there was
and
a-
see,
there was a
but,
kind of-
but there was a bit of rivalry.
Yeah, a bit of rivalry going
So at
on.
that time, we're talking about early 60s still, before, was this
Now
before
we're
the
up
Beatles?
we're up to about 63 now, 64.
Okay, so just the Beatles were just starting
yeah,
out.
that's right.
What was the camaraderie between, I mean, you obviously started photographing Dave and his band, Dave Clark's band. What was the camaraderie like with the other bands that you met and worked with? Do they all get on? Was there much rivalry between them?
Oh, it's quite a lot of rivalry, but it was friendly rivalry. You
That's
know.
nice.
But yeah, well, there's a lot of rivalry because they all wanted to get known, and
Sure.
they're all travelling around in these dreadful vans. They didn't have any money.
Oh,
You know, they were rushing about in these terrible old vans from gig to gigs and working their arses
and
off.
not staying in hotels, usually sleeping in the vans?
Sometimes they'd sleep in the van.
Right.
They didn't have the money, you know, and they
Yeah.
were getting pittances as well. But
Were they
wanted-
signed?
But they were so keen. They wanted
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
musicians. They just wanted to do it. Dave, on the other hand, Dave Clark, formed it more as a business. He set it up as a
Man,
business.
yeah.
He was very clever. He got a bit hated by the industry because he was smart and he didn't give away his publishing.
Very clever man.
You see, and so they didn't like him
No, of
because
course
they couldn't
not.
get their hand on his money.
No, exactly.
Whereas Jimmy never had any money. He'd go in the office and say, I need some money. And they'd give him 2,000 quid. And then he'd go and spend it. You know, and meantime, they're robbing him blind.
That time as well. So
I met Michael Jeffries. I didn't like him at all.
who was that, the agent?
He was his
Manager at the time.
Yeah. Chaz was his manager, Chaz Chandler.
So tell us
at
about
first.
how you met Chaz Chandler from the Animals to how you got to meet the legendary Jimi Hendrix.
Well, funnily enough, I worked with David Block, that's Les Perrin's.
Yes.
An awful lot. We worked together a lot. And he rang me one day and said, there's this Irish guy called Ronan O'Reilly. He's going to start a radio station, but on the sea, on a boat. I said, really? He said, yeah. We're going to Ireland to meet him. I said, are we? He said, yeah. So we got a plane and flew to Dublin.
And that must have been so, not knowing what your next job is going to be, where, what location, that's
what I loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, I've always loved that.
Where, you know,
yeah, I've always loved that.
The freedom,
yeah.
you
never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. The spontaneity of it all as well.
I call it the uncertain day. You don't know what's going to happen next.
I love that.
I love the spontaneity of that.
Absolutely.
You know. So we flew to Ireland, and there's this lovely young man who's crazy about the Kennedys, and that's why it was called
the politician family.
Jack Kennedy, President Kennedy. Crazy about it because they're Irish anyway, and part Irish. So he said, "Right, come with me," and we got in this car. And a Mercedes, and we drove to Ballymore, I think it was, and there was this bloody old tramp steamer with an enormous mast. I said, you're kidding? He said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to sail out there. We're going to. So he was a pirate, and the government loathed him, the British government, because they had no control over it. It wasn't the BBC
first pirate
anymore.
station.
That's right.
Radio Caroline.
Right, so I climbed the mast.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And got the shot of the boat from the top, which I'll show you the pictures.
Oh yes.
Oh, it's on my.
And like you say, with Dave Clark, because they couldn't have control of his publishing, with the radio stations and the broadcasting industry, they couldn't.
And anything against the system, I love.
We love you, Bruce.
You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go and carry on.
So I went out to the boat, got on board. All sorts of people were on there that are quite famous now as DJs, and had a great time photographing.
You were the only photographer there?
Yep, I was their photographer. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did you get to meet the Animals and Chas Chandler?
Ronan had a band called the Animals in Newcastle. And when they came down, he said, go and take some pictures of them. So I met them and photographed Alan Price, Chas Chandler.
Eric Burden?
Eric Burden, yeah. They were doing songs about, there was a house in New Orleans. He was a blues singer, but they belted it out. So I did all their photography and made friends with them, because they were great guys. And then one day in '66, I remember September '66, I got a call from Chas, and he said, come in, I want to talk to you. He said, I got a black guy here, guitar player, called Jimi Hendrix. We brought him over from the States. And I want you to photograph him.
About him?
Yeah, Chas was his manager for a while.
But how did he discover him, do you know?
Well, he was in New York, and somebody told him about Jimmy, and he went to see him and thought, wow, this guy's something else. And being a musician, he could tell,
of course,
this is
not the usual,
the usual run of things. So he brought him over, and he stayed with Chas. And I said, what was he like? He said he'd get up in the morning and put the guitar on his neck, go and have a dump. He'd sit in the toilet, and you could hear, He said he never left the guitar alone. He was playing all the time. He was music. When you talk to Jimmy, he'd be with you, but he was also elsewhere.
So how old was Jimmy when he first came to the UK?
Well, he was 27 when he died, and I was 32. So I guess 25. It was only a couple of years before he died. That's the sad part.
Such a short period of time.
Exactly. So
when you met him...
66, 67, 68, 69.
Yeah, 3 years.
That's it.
Yeah. So when you first met him without him playing an instrument, you just knew there was a real presence. What a great... Someone so unique.
There's something about him.
Yeah. The way he looked, the way he dressed.
No, I get the same buzz from Mark, funnily enough, Mark Anthony. I know this is a serious guy. You can feel it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This guy wants to do this. No, he's an artist. He's on his way. I don't know. You can feel it.
Yeah.
And I could feel that there was something different about this guy.
And then when you first saw him perform?
Well, I was recording studio. I never saw him perform at a concert or anything.
Oh, you didn't? Okay,
no.
But in the studio it must have been astounding. I mean,
oh, that was exciting. Yeah, that was exciting. I saw him play when he was making the first album, which I did the cover of with
that's
a cloak.
right. Yes.
I was invited along to listen to that. And
when you heard the music, you must have been
it's the first time I'd heard phasing from one speaker to another.
Right.
Because I was late that day and the lights were on and I couldn't go in. But when they finished playing, I went in and Jimmy was in the box and he went, "Come on up." And he literally stood me in between the speakers and said, "Listen to this." And then the engineer played this phasing. And you know, I never heard him like it. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's fantastic, amazing." It's just an amazing thing.
And then did Chas find the band for him as well? Because he could be managing him as well.
They auditioned for the band, and yeah.
And what was his personality like? You say, you know, when you first met him, his mind would be somewhere else. So always thinking about music, but quite shy, would you say, as a person?
Yeah, quite shy. Yeah, quite shy, but totally into music. And I was in the recording studios with them when they were rehearsing a lot. You know.
And was there any artists?
I've got all the photographs of that.
Oh, wait to see them. Was there any artists, English artists that he liked that he talked to you about? Obviously, he's really into music, but did he like the Beatles and all those other bands at the time?
Well, funny enough, we talked about
American artists.
We didn't really talk about artists. We talked about space.
Oh,
he was
okay.
into Isaac Asimov, and I was into Daniken and Lawrence. And were there beings on other planets? And believe me, what we were smoking, there were. You know. And he could roll these. He taught me to roll a 5-paper joint. I'd never be able to do that. You know.
So we're now in the mid-60s where drugs is really rife within the entertainment industry, and there's a lot of hedonism going on as well. Everyone's partaking, artists, photographers, people who love music. Tell us about the 60s in London and someone like as iconic as Hendrix. Like on the way here, I was reading when he got up and played with Cream, and you know, Eric Clapton was the man that everyone looked up to. And then when Jimmy got on stage, it was like respect. Obviously, they had a little friendship as well by the time that Jimmy was in London. But tell us about the time.
The story goes that they played at Scott's and St James. He sat in with the band. And Clapton was there, and then suddenly there were loads of guitar players coming in, Jeff Beck, and they're all having to listen to this new guy. And apparently Clapton said, "Christ," he said, "I knew he was good, but not that good. You know, fucking hell. What's happening?" Because he just had another way of doing things.
And did Jimmy ever talk to you about not being, I don't know the word accepted, but he obviously came to the UK to make it, and obviously he played with Little Richard, and did he play with James Brown as well, I think?
Possibly.
But
there was a thing called the
artists.
Chitlin circuit, which was black guys moving around black clubs.
Right.
All around America.
Yeah, because there's all segregation.
Yeah, that's right. There you go, that's America for you, you know. Ain't changed much.
But did he ever talk to you about not really being accepted in the US or how much they love him here?
That's what he talked about.
That's great.
He was really impressed by how he was accepted immediately.
That's beautiful.
And people were making friends with him, and wow, you know, what's going on?
And do you know if he met any of his musical heroes while he was in London? Or did he talk about that?
No, I only saw him briefly now and again to take his picture, you know.
But tell us when he spent Christmas, had a Christmas lunch with yourself.
David arranged...
Dave Clark?
David Block, the PR man, arranged a trip for Sweeney Todd's down in Chelsea, which was a hairdresser's.
Yeah.
And they were going to do a double thing. So Jimmy and the boys went down there and had their hair done there. And I got all the pictures in the papers, which they thought about. And while we were there, I said to Jimmy, it was November, I think, I said, "What are you doing for Christmas?" He said, "Well, not much." He said, I can't go home, which was Seattle, the other side of America. He said, because I got gigs coming up, I guess I'll sit in the hotel. I said, no, you won't.
Oh.
You'll come and have dinner with me and the boys. He said, great. And he came on Christmas Day, and we finished on Boxing Day. About 10 o'clock in the morning on Boxing Day. And Mike Smith was there from the Dave Clark Five, and all sorted lovely friends. And there was Jimmy. One girl came in called Raven, and she was from America. And we had a boy staying with us who had fled the draft, so he didn't go to Vietnam. And his girlfriend came with him to England. Came in a caftan and flowers, and she saw Jimmy and went, oh, and she got on her knees and oh, and he said, please, he's embarrassed, please get up, will you? Please get up. And then we got into smoking and carrying on and playing music, and was that big old record player, and just had the most wonderful night. We had a huge turkey, and
I'm so happy that he was accepted by the UK music loving community,
totally.
And the artists.
Yeah, totally.
To not be accepted by your own community and from where you're from, and so many musicians, whatever time scale, whether it's the 80s, 90s, they always want to be loved and respected where
absolutely.
They were born.
Because the musicians, there is no colour in musicians. It doesn't matter what, you can be green, who cares?
Yeah,
are you a musician?
Right.
Are you what is your personality like?
Yeah.
What kind of person are you? That's...
So tell us about Monterey Festival. So that was a big thing that really put him on the map worldwide to be this established icon.
Yeah.
And you had people like the wonderful Janis Joplin. Tell us about the artists that were performing. Obviously you told me that you missed that trick where he tried to compete with The Who, and he set his guitar on fire. But tell us about the Monterey Festival 1967, the kind of artists that are happening and how Jimmy went down.
I think it was one of the first festivals. I think there was one previous one, but it was very big. It was a big festival. It was also a lovely festival because if you couldn't afford it, they'd probably let you in anyway. The guys who were running it were trying to make money, but money wasn't the most important thing.
That's beautiful. I love that.
People who were in love with money, we called them breadheads.
Well, still, the terminology you can use
that's
now.
all they're interested in.
Yeah.
What the fuck, is that
but
it?
you got to see Otis Reading live. I'm so jealous. I mean, what?
He came out in a silk suit, a dark blue silk suit. And he came out and he said, "You must be the Love Crowd." And he let it rip. And it was just...
He's one of the greatest. Lou Rawls is another one.
Wow, did he...
And you actually saw on your Instagram account, and we'll go into about social media, even though everyone might not be so active, but I want everyone to see your work. But that photo you took of Otis Reading, as well as all the amazing ones of Jimi Hendrix. But before we wrap up, tell us of all the other actors and other musicians that you photographed, what their personalities were, and the best experiences you had, other than with Jimmy, because obviously you were his official photographer, you took the cover of the first album, but other artists and creatives that you took that you really bonded with, and what good experience it was for you.
Well, I was the first guy to photograph the Kinks.
Oh, how amazing.
A guy called Larry Page, they called him the Teenage Rage when he was a singer, he had a place in Tin Pan Alley, opposite Les Perrin's office, and he's a tall guy, and he called me in and said, I've got a band I'm going to put together. I hear you're into bands. I said, yeah, sure. He said, British boys from North London, which I was from. He said, we don't have a name for them yet, but we like them and we think they're going to be big. So could you dream up some photography for them? So I met them and I thought, they're a funny bunch. So I thought I'd better do something really electrifying. So I got long leather boots, which were popular then, and chains, and bullwhips. I got a couple of bullwhips, and there were 4 of them. And I got some plate glass and got my camera behind it and had them whip the glass.
Oh wow, what a great
so it was
concept.
I thought I'd do something outrageous.
Yeah, that's so different.
So they were whipping this glass like that, and I showed him the picture. He said, bloody hell. They banned the
This
pictures.
is Ray.
This is
Or David.
This
oh,
is
the guy that had
yeah,
Page.
Larry Page. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, bloody hell, we're going to get into trouble with these." He said, "Good, good,
Yeah,
good."
good.
So I had to recreate that again because the TV wanted to photograph it. It got banned on the BBC. Banned from EMI, no pictures. They're going to get you to see pictures. So I had to do some straight ones in the studio as well, which I'll show you. And then I got up high and shot down on them,
And that's way before Oasis, where
well,
brothers
this is a funny
were-
thing.
the brothers
Several
together.
people say they named him, but this is a funny thing. So Larry said, "What do you think?" I said, "They're great." I heard him play, and he said, "I think they're great." I said, "They're a bit kinky though." He said, "Kinky?" I said, "Yeah, there's something kinky about them, the way they move and sing, So I think that's where they got the name, but I can't prove it.
Well,
Because there's another guy who says he gave them the name, and I don't mind, I don't give a shit.
yeah.
But
But
it's
that-
funny
that-
I should say they're a bit kinky, because that was a big word then,
Of course, in
Kinky
those
chicks
times as well,
and,
yeah.
with short skirts and all that sort of stuff.
And what about Richard Burton? You did lots of actors as well.
Yeah,
You did portraits or on film sets.
No, I just had to go on sets and photograph them, and but they were lovely. They were lovely people.
Elizabeth Taylor. Did you ever shoot the wonderful Eartha Kitt again after that first time?
Yes, I did. I photographed her at the Talk of the Time, Tap of the Town, performing, which was.
And she remember you?
Yeah, I went backstage and said hello, and she gave us some pictures, and yeah, she was lovely.
But that must be so.
She was really great.
It's all worth it. Follow this passion, follow this career. When artists and people that you really admire, whether it's a jazz musician, Jimi Hendrix, really appreciate your work, as well as outside forces now going, wow, Bruce Fleming, all these pictures of Jimi Hendrix. For
I'm
a
not,
creative
I'm
and
not a
photographer-
legend. I'm a messenger. Photographers are messengers. They're telling you what's going on.
Sure.
That's what we do. I'm just a photographer, I'm
But a
not-
great
I'm not-
photographer.
Well,
but then,
thanks for that.
no, but you are. But having the artists and your subjects that you take pictures of
Yeah.
appreciate your work, that must make it all worth it and,
Well,
and make you continue to want to
Well,
do
sometimes you get some surprises.
that. In
I
terms
work-
of they're not great to work
I
with.
work for Woman's Own, which sounds odd, but I got some really amazing jobs from them. And they sent me out to photograph Richard Harris, the actor.
Great actor.
So they said, spend a day with him. We want to see what happens. I said, okay. So I went down to his house in Kensington, beautiful house, banged on the door. Butler opened the door, because he was married to a very wealthy lady and had children and all that. And I go in and I said, I'm the photographer. They said, fine, we know you're coming. He said, sit down, a beautiful room. And I was sitting and reading the paper. And I suddenly saw something in the door, and it's this man, and he's dressed like that. He's got this old white dressing gown. And he came and said, hello. And I said, hi. Mr. Harris? He said, yes. Are you Bruce? I said, yes, I am, sir. He said, well, sit there and I'll be down soon. And I thought, well, that's the end of this session. He's been on the Raz, and that's the end of that. So he went upstairs, and then I sat and read the paper, sat there for a while, a cup of tea, and then I heard bang. And then about 20 minutes later, down the stairs, he said, ha ha ha. Okay then, he said, right. You're my photographer for the day. I said, yes, I am. He said, there's one condition. You have to drink what I drink. I said, okay.
Without even knowing what it was.
So if you have to drink, drink for drink. I said, I'll be there. I'm there. Because I was a drinker. So we set off, we go to the park. He said, I started on a park bench. That's how I started. I came to London from Ireland. I had bugger all. So I had him under newspapers, and then I had him with friends and all that. So then we went to a pub, and I can't remember which one it was, and I met Brendan Behan's brother, Dominic, and an assorted Irishman, and we started drinking, and I'm drinking, I'm taking pictures of them, And he said, right, he said, we're off to the London Irish Club in somewhere over West London. He said, and we're going to see the match there. It's a big match. The Irish are playing so-and-so. So we all piled into this Mini. Now, Brendan's brother is huge, and I'm sitting like this in one corner. I get another Irishman there, another one in the front, and Richard's driving, and this tiny Mini. And it had those sliding plastic doors, windows.
Yeah.
And we're doing about 90 out Sunley, out towards Sunley, and we're howling. And then we hear ding-a-ling-ling, ding-a-ling-ling, police. Ding-a-ling-ling, they pull up in front of us. And I'm in the back, I can't see much.
And you've been drinking?
We got a bottle going round, a bottle of scotch going round in the car. And one policeman stood in front of the car, I could just see part of him, and the other one came round and slid the road. And I couldn't hear the policeman, but he was talking like that. And Richard said, do you know who I am? And he said, yes, I know. He said, well, no, listen, no, you and your friend fuck off, or I'm going to get out this car and beat you to death with your own arms, okay? So fuck off. And they did. They did. They went back to the car and got him buggered off.
Wow, what a great story.
I know. So we roared off and got to the match, saw the match, drinking all the time. I'm trying to take pictures, and I'm getting, so I'm not sure which way the camera's up, but I'm trying. Then we go to this dugout, a big barn affair, wooden barn with a piano, and I have to tell stories, and he tells stories, and we all get completely arseholed. And I keep seeing people nipping out and going, and I thought, it's my turn. So I have a big old overcoat on, camera on each side here, and one in the front, Canons. Those cameras up there. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. So I said, excuse me. I went out to her, and I walked across the pitch, and it's freezing, and it's black, completely black. You can't see a thing. So I breathed in and went, and passed out, and fell forward into the mud. Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah. The camera here, the lens was crushed into the body and ruined the camera. And I landed up like this. And they packed up and went home. And I came round at about 3 in the morning. So it's 3 in the morning, and they've all gone home. And I get up and covered in mud.
Did he drive home in that state, Richard Harris?
I suppose so. I don't know. But there's a bloody great gate with barbed wire, and I have to get over it.
With your broken lens and everything.
Yeah,
oh my
there's
gosh.
nobody there. They've all gone.
Oh my gosh.
Everything's gone. You know, the place is closed.
Yeah.
So I climbed up over this thing. I feel terrible, by the way, because I've been sick, and also I'm pissed. It's a fire. And there's a long pathway up to the road, the main road. So I walked up there with my cameras and covered in mud. And you won't believe this, a bloody London taxi came by. And I went like that, and he pulled up and said, bloody hell, mate, what happened to you? I said I was on the match and they left me there, and I fell into the mud. And said, get in the car. So I couldn't get home, so I went to a girlfriend's. And I was poisoned for 3 days. Doctor came around and said, you were alcoholic poisoning. You could have killed yourself. And that was my experience with Richard Harris. Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah.
So did you get good photographs?
Oh
while you
yeah,
were busy?
oh yeah, everybody was thrilled with
Did
the
you see him
pictures.
again after that?
No.
Okay.
No.
So we're going to wrap up this interview. I want to say thank you to yourself, to John Cassidy and the wonderful Jemima for the introduction to yourself, your beautiful wife Kim.
Pleasure.
We're going to have a bit of lunch now. So Mark Anthony for filming and editing. This is TerryTopCat for TerryTopCat Presents for clusterview.com with the messenger, Bruce Fleming. I love how you said that's the messenger. Your work is incredible. What plans? So you, quickly just mentioned the Lenny Kravitz. So he's actually, through his management, bought some of because obviously he's a massive fan, and a lot of people are fan of his endless, timeless music, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
If people wanted to buy some work from you, do you have a website or you obviously have social media of Bruce Fleming on?
No, I don't. I've never embraced social media.
Okay.
I don't understand it, and that's too late for me, really.
Okay.
The problem I have now is I'm going blind very slowly with macular degeneration, age-related, and I have to have injections in my eyes every 6 weeks. and I've been 6 years now with injections, and it's keeping me going. And I'm also taking tablets to nourish the macula. But gradually there's a little cloud in the centre of my eye, so I can't see detail. I'm looking at your face now, I can't see it. It's just a grey blob. But if I look at your hairline, I can see your face now. I'm using peripheral vision. The centre's gone. So detail, I can't drive, I can't read.
Don't take pictures anymore?
No, I've got the big cameras there. You see that one there?
Yeah.
And I have an assistant, so I focus with loops. I've got one handy, with a loop, and then my boy has a look and makes sure I'm sharp. So I can do the odd picture, but I can't.
But if people
really.
wanted to buy your work or see your work, you have a website, don't you?
No, I don't, and I'm thinking of rebuilding another one.
You should do.
Yeah.
You should
do. The problem I have there is Colin, who was my accountant, is now a millionaire, is supposed to be selling my archive. I'm going to sell my archive, I hope. Now the archive will be exclusive and everything will be sold. So it's difficult for me to have a website because it's supposed to be finished now, and he's going to sell my archive, which I'll show you later. So it's difficult for me to have a website. But
if they wanted to if anyone was interested, like obviously Lenny Kravitz Management, obviously contacted
they know where
someone.
I am. Yeah,
right,
they know
okay.
where I am.
So
yeah.
if people were interested in buying your archives, or even to see it, where can people see, other than just look up Jimi Hendrix and your name on the internet?
When we moved here 5 years ago, and then COVID hit, but it was ideal for me because I was 3 years in here researching my own archive, which was 27,000 pictures, all these boxes. And I had to go through the whole lot, and my assistant, who doesn't work for me anymore, bless him, but he's a genius, and he built me a website. So I'd send him all the photographs and he'd put them on. And it's a private website, so that Colin, my buddy, could send this, say a millionaire wanted to have a look, you could send it down the line and say, this is it. And I'll show you afterwards. It's quite impressive.
I'm sure.
But the thing I'm finding is people don't necessarily, we've already tried Bonhams, and I don't think they want to take the whole thing. They want the music. The music thing is Jimmy and The Who, and that's what they want really.
Bruce, I want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for...
Great pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving us your time, and we're going to have a bit of lunch now, and just hopefully everyone's going to enjoy this interview, which Mark Anthony's going to edit later, and it'll be on clusterview.com. Thank you, Bruce Fleming, for your time. It's been an absolute honour.
Great pleasure, and thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure as well.
Thank you.